Welcome to Focus on Growth. I'm Tom Doorley of Sage Partners. I'll be your host today. This episode of Focus on Growth continues our series of helping you to navigate through the fog of change. The fog of change is almost unprecedented right now. Incredible change in technology. Just take one, AI. AI is disrupting how as we see the world, how does we work, and we have to figure out how to make it work for us. Geopolitics, shifting from global progressivism to something like, I don't know, maybe a local populism or something, and the rise of China. And finally, here comes social media finding its way. And it's amazing that a small number of fringe ideas can have enormous impact. This is the fog of change. And we need to find a way to help our organizations navigate it. And to do so, we're going to talk today about the role of leadership. My guest is Cordell Bennigson. You may remember Cordell. We did a podcast where we talked about his leadership journey a year ago. It was right at the top of our highly rated podcasts. He is an accomplished, just to remind you, he is an accomplished leader from his days as a military officer in the Marine Corps to his time as a CEO and COO. And currently, he's a member of a world-class leadership and development organization called Echelon Front. Welcome, Cordell.
Hey, good morning, Tom. Good to see you. Glad to be here again.
It's good to see you too. So we talked about in our prep call 5 things that speak to the need for and how the role for leadership to help us see through the fog of change, which is really important. The first one you talk about is being able to step back as a leader and sort things out, maybe take out emotion from things as much as you can, and see the big things that we need to focus on.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. The conversation you and I were just having before we started, we were talking about some of the things that you're aware of in my family life recently. I had a son get married. I've had a son graduate from college. And it struck me just as you were going through the introduction, that's all change. Right? Change happens in our life all the time. And if we frame it the right way in our heads, that's a positive experience. Of course, we want those things. I want my life to change. I want my kids to go to college, graduate college, move out of the house, get married. But so frequently, our natural mindset is actually one that resists change. That's why we have there's a whole profession around change management, right? If everybody just embraced it and loved it and it happened naturally, that would probably be a much smaller profession. But we're naturally resistant to it. So this idea of how do we navigate it? How do we lead through the fog of change? I think it's a great conversation. I think it's relevant in every aspect of life. It's relevant to every business, absolutely relevant to the business environment today. I shared with you previously that one of the books that I like is it's The Emperor's Handbook, which is the writings of Marcus Aurelius. And one of the reasons I like the book is because I go back, I read that from a leader 2,000 years ago, and he was dealing with change. It wasn't happening as fast, and he wasn't dealing with the technological change, but there was change, and the leadership challenges he was dealing with were at the core some of the same issues that we deal with today as people, as leaders going through change. And so, I think the things we're talking about here, I think your whole concept around the fog of change is a universal principle.
I'm glad to hear you say that. And of course, we prepped this, so I'd have been surprised if you didn't agree. But nonetheless, it really is important. So we talk now about sort of the idea of setting priorities. There's so much going on. We call it having the CEO having a change agenda, maybe 5 things to worry about. How do you do that? How do you get your hands around all the things going on, Cordell? How do you sort out and set those priorities?
Yeah, I think in any leadership situation, being able to set clear priorities is paramount. Otherwise we have chaos. And the more chaotic a situation is, the more important it is that the leader be able to set those priorities and that they be clear and concise and that people be able to understand them. It's no coincidence that you're using the fog of change terminology, which is my background when I was in the military, a lot of people are familiar with the term the fog of war. Well, why is that the same? Why does that terminology work? Because from an emotional level, change and crisis are actually can be really similar. Right? They both involve uncertainty. They both involve some fear. They can both involve excitement, but there's certainly confusion. And in an environment like that, it's just so important that not only the leader, but everybody in the organization understand the priorities, and everybody understands the vision of where they're going. And the first step in being able to do that is for the leader to be able to step back for a second, to be able to, what we refer to at Echelon Front, we say leader has to be able to detach from the situation so that they can maintain perspective. When the emotion flares up around fear and uncertainty and anxiety and all of these things, we have this natural human tendency to become very fixated on one thing. Target fixation is what we would refer to it in the military as. And when we do that, we lose perspective. And we lose perspective of the big picture and all the complexities and everything that's going on. And we become hyper-focused on just one little piece of the puzzle. And when we do that, we're not making good decisions because we're not taking the big, broader context into consideration. So what do? How do you do that? How do we detach from all of that chaos? It's just about creating a little bit of mental space. And that can be, sometimes it's as simple as literally just taking a deep breath. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is taking a little bit of time between when the input comes in and when my response is. Maybe I don't necessarily always want to fire off the email as fast as I can if it gets, my blood gets boiling. Sometimes that distance is physical. Sometimes we need to step away from the issue for a minute or the conflict for a minute in order to let our emotions come back down. But what we're looking for is just to create a little bit of space in time or distance or emotion so that we can maintain the big picture perspective. And that leads us then to be able to make better decisions, especially in a really chaotic environment.
I like that, the idea of sort of space and as you're sort of catching your breath, as it were, to sort of sort things out. Exactly. And then, of course, once you've done that, you need to communicate what's happening to the organization and talk about the ability to touch all levels of the organization. Because one of the things you and I have talked about is the importance of the CEO change agenda, the priorities existing not just at the C-suite, but all the way down to the factory floor, down to the coalface, as it were.
Yeah, I think most people are probably familiar with some of the concepts around skip level communication and there's all the different channels for communication. There's verbal, there's video, there's email, there's posters, there's lots of means of communicating. Most people are probably familiar with the old adage, communicate as much as you can, and then do it 10 times more than that. And when you do that, you're about 10% of the way there. So it takes so much more communication than we think it's going to. But what we think a little less about sometimes is what is it we're communicating? How do we communicate in a way that people can understand? Because it's not actually about us talking. It's not actually about what we're saying. It's about what's being heard, what's being understood. And our natural human instinct is to think that the more that I talk and the more detail that I give you and the more I explain what's going on, the better you're going to understand it. And what we see time and time again is that's not true. That actually, the more we talk, the more confused people become. And the more details we give them, the less they remember. So part of the communication of that vision, of that change agenda, is being able to boil it down into really simple, clear, concise messages, and then repeating those simple communications a lot. It's not more information. It's not more detail. It's a lot of communication of very simple, clear concepts. That's actually how we drive understanding. And that understanding, that clarity starts to really cut through that fog of change that you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. So the next point was one which I find fascinating, and I'm going to guess to lots of leaders is one that is almost terrifying. This idea to decentralize command and control, because it seems like, man, if all hell's breaking loose, why not just mean to be on everything, every day, every time? And that's wrong. That's wrong.
The idea of decentralized command, and it's one of the four, we call them the laws of combat. They're leadership principles that we teach at Echelon Front. And there's four of them. Cover and move, which is about teamwork. Simple, which we just talked about, which is about communication. Prioritize and execute, which is maintaining perspective and setting clear priorities. And this fourth one, decentralized command. And the concept of decentralized command means that what we want is everybody in our organization making decisions. We want everybody taking action without waiting to be told. Now, we hear terms like this a lot in different organizations. Some people talk about it as empowering the front lines. Some people talk about it as delegation, things along those lines. But what we're talking about here is we want people making decisions, taking action, and doing it without being told. Now, in the businesses that I ran, in the teams that I ran, this was actually for me always the most fun of those four leadership principles. Because when this works, when you build a culture where this is the way people are operating, then it's an unstoppable organization. It's like water flowing around a rock that somebody throws in a river. It just happens naturally, and the whole organization responds to what's going on. In the Marine Corps, we would refer to that as small unit leadership tactics. We want leadership happening at the lowest level, because the one thing we would know on the battlefield is we don't know what's going to happen on the battlefield. And if everybody had to stop all the time and wait for the general to make the decision, that's really dangerous on the battlefield. We see this on sports teams. We don't want the players stopping every time they get the ball to ask the coach what to do. We want them making decisions and taking action. So when we can build that into an organization, it doesn't matter what kind of change is happening. There's always people in the organization who see it, who are responding to it, who are adjusting, who are making decisions, who are making improvement. When that's happening, that is such a fun environment to be in. That organization is fast, it's nimble, it's innovative, it's flexible, and it's absorbing and responding to and taking advantage of the changes that are happening in ways we might not even have thought of, because we're unleashing all of the expertise, all the creativity of the people that are on our team.
And I think that I love the teamwork concept, because a friend of mine is a coach who lives in Barcelona, so he coaches soccer, which they call football, but it's, we know what it is, right? And he says that when a team is working well, it's almost telepathic.
Yeah.
That as you say, if I have I might do something that I'd have to respond to the situation, and then I throw the ball, pass the ball, kick the ball to somebody else who knows somehow to be there. And so that idea of me taking responsibility, taking independent action, and you knowing me because you're my teammate, you can react to it, and everything works. And I really like that. So it's terrifying, right? But I was in the concept, but in actuality, I love it. It really works well. Yeah.
It's funny that you say it's terrifying, because I think when we think about doing it ourselves, and we think about unleashing our team to do that, it's terrifying. But when we see it work in any high performing organization, whether it's a sports team or it's a military unit or any team where people are taking ownership, taking action, the coach is stepping back, the leader is stepping back, and the team is executing. When we see it happen in other places, we appreciate it.
Yes,
we recognize it as high performing, high speed. It's really inspirational. But when we turn that back on ourselves, it becomes scary.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges in really good leadership. Is really good leadership is counterintuitive. It's scary to us. We recognize it when we see it, but it's scary to us. And so in order to lead well, we have to be able to overcome that. We have to be able to overcome our own biases, our own tendencies to make these scary, unnatural, uncomfortable decisions. But when we can do it, that's what unleashes the organization.
So for the final point, then, let's pick up on what you call iteration. This idea of, obviously, stuff happens. You didn't anticipate, you had a plan, but now something has happened that you didn't know was going to happen, and you have to react to it. So how do we sort of take that in, the reactions, and iterate to get to sort of a new result, or not necessarily a new result, but a new path to success?
Sure. If we go back to what you were saying around the idea of decentralizing command is terrifying, that's because we envision these really big, bad things happening. Well, if I let the team make these decisions, they're going to make catastrophic mistakes, and that's scary. And so our reaction to that is to centralize control, is to hold on to it. The idea around iterating, iterative decision making is let's not make those big, huge decisions. Me or the team or anybody, let's break the decisions down into the smallest parts that we can. You're probably familiar with, most people are familiar with the phrase fail fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Nobody says fail fast catastrophically.
Right.
That's not what they mean. What they mean is fail fast in really small steps, because in that case, those failures don't cost us too much. They're learning opportunities, and we can pivot off of each one. So when we decentralize command, and whether we're making the decisions or we're asking someone else to make the decisions, what we're asking everybody to do is make the smallest, fastest, rapid decisions that they can. And then each of those becomes a moment for learning and observation and figuring out what to do next, and then make the next small, fast decision. When we do that, although we're making small decisions, we're actually moving really, really fast. We get a high speed organization that isn't a high risk organization, because the decisions are small. So in a change environment where the one thing we know is that we don't know, things are happening so fast. One option is to freeze. We know we don't want to do that. Another option is to make big, giant bets about what we think the future is going to look like. And we don't want to do that, because if we're wrong, that's problematic. So breaking it down and breaking the decisions down into the smallest little iterative steps we can do, let us keep moving, let us keep having momentum, maintain speed, but be very, very flexible and responsive to what's actually happening in the market, what's happening with the technology, what's happening as a result of every decision we make. When we can combine all of these things, rapid iterative decision-making, decentralized command, a clear vision about where we're going, that organization's unstoppable.
Boy, I think you're right. And when I felt that in my organizations or in the client organizations, you can actually feel it, can't you? You just sort of,
it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun.
And that's happening.
Yeah, winning is fun. I have to say that. Yes.
Winning is fun.
Most of the time. So as we wrap up here, so I always ask my guests to say, give me your elevator pitch, Cordell. So what do you see for yourself the next, I don't know, several years going forward? How does it unfold?
First, I say I love what I get. I love what I get to do, which is help people lead better. Yeah. And part of the reason I love doing that is because I love the outcome. I love winning. I love the impact of that. But even more importantly, leadership has a real impact on the lives of people. It has an impact on the life of the leader, on the lives of the people in the organization. It has an impact on our families, because leadership is about influencing other people and how our behaviors and actions influence folks. So I love what I get to do because of that. So I have every intention of continuing to do this and to help people be successful in their businesses and their teams and their lives. I've been working on a book to try to help me do that. It's a ways away. I think it's a good probably 6 to 12 months away. It's with a publisher right now. But the premise is that these principles we're talking about, these leadership principles, they're applicable. They're universally applicable in every aspect of our lives, in our private lives, in business, in change situations, in crisis situations. And the more we can be authentic in the way we lead through these, the more we can be consistent in the way we lead, regardless of the context and the environment, the easier it becomes, the more effective it becomes, the deeper our relationships become, and it really becomes part of our identity. So I'm having a lot of fun working on that. Right. But like anybody who's written a book will tell you, it takes a lot longer than you think maybe it will when you start the process.
And I've done that. I've done that twice, 3 times actually. And yeah, it does take time. There's no question. But when you get it out there, boy, it feels good, and it gives you a way to reach a broad audience that is important. So thank you, Cordell. If somebody wants to reach you, how should they do that?
So there's 2 ways, I guess, of getting in touch with me. One, anybody who wants to can reach me via email. But actually, the easiest thing now that I think about it is probably just to track me down on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Cordell Bennigson, on LinkedIn. I put weekly posts out about leadership, little nuggets, little bite-sized nuggets about leadership. And
I read them diligently, by the way. I do. Yep.
Thanks. And of course, you can reach me through the messaging on LinkedIn and things like that. So I'd love to hear from anybody, either feedback on on our conversation here or other questions about leadership, whatever it might be. So I would love to have people reach out.
Super. Thank you. So as I close, let me reprise where it is we started. It is the fog of change. It is a tough time. It is a challenge. But by following the leadership principles that we discussed today, we can, in fact, find a way through it. Let's do that. Thank you for listening. Take care and be well.